Well, good morning. Thanks for joining our weekly gathering. I know it's early, but I hope you are already seeing signs of a great day ahead. By now, we all pretty well know that in times of emergency, the number to call is 911. How are those services provided, and how well do they stack up here in Upper Michigan? We have someone who can answer those questions. And with the sled dog season upon us, we'll have a Ryan Report flashback to the Iditarod. It all starts right now.
From TV6, this is the Ryan Report. Now, here's your host, Don Ryan.
You know, in the early days of telephone service, there was no need for an emergency number because all the calls went through an operator. All you had to say was, "Operator, my house is on fire," or "Send the police," and she would do just that. Once dial phones came into service, people started thinking about a simple number that anyone could remember and call in an emergency. There were communities in various parts of the world who experimented with early numbers, but it all came to a head in 1968 when the Federal Communications Commission and AT&T chose the number 911. Brief, easy to remember, dialed easily, and worked well with the phone systems in place at that time. However, the number itself did not become widely known until the 1970s, and many municipalities did not have 911 service until well into the 80s. Marquette County Central Dispatch was established on August 1st, 1977. What's happened since then? We'll talk about that this morning with our guest, Gary Johnson. Gary's the manager of the Marquette County Central Dispatch. Thanks for joining us, Gary.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're a Marquette native, direct from Marquette?
Yes, I have grown up in Harvey.
Okay, went to school at Northern Michigan?
I did, yep, and I got a bachelor's degree in criminal justice.
And besides being involved with 911, you were also the fire chief in Chalkley Township, I understand.
Yes, yeah, I've been on the fire department for over 24 years.
So occasionally you must be at work and someone has to call you over and say, "Gary, you got to go back to Chalkley Township."
Yeah, it does happen.
Those things can happen. Tell us a little bit about let's focus first on Marquette County. Sure. How is this service organized? How does it run?
Well, we have a total of 12 full-time dispatchers, and we cover all police, fire, EMS dispatch within Marquette County. Okay. So anywhere in the county, when you dial 911, you get one of our dispatchers. And we have a total of 47 agencies that we dispatch for. And we have radio communication with all. For fire and EMS, we alert them through a pager system. And we handle roughly 26,000 911 calls a year, a total of almost 100,000 phone calls when you include our administrative phones, and then we dispatch roughly 50,000 incidents a year.
That's a lot. 26,000 phone calls annually. That's quite a few a day.
Yes, yeah, we're very busy.
How many people are on duty at most times?
We always have 2 dispatchers on duty, 24/7. And we try to run 3 when we can on afternoon shift, because that's always our busiest time. From about 3 in the afternoon till 10, 11 at night is generally our busiest time.
And you have a board that kind of oversees the operation or sets policy, let's say, for the operation?
Yes, we do have a policy board. It's made up of representatives from police, fire, and EMS in the community, also the local townships, cities, and there is even a county board rep on that board. And that board sets our policies that we use for dispatch.
And even though you are busy, you do want people to call 911, right? Most police agencies want the calls to go through Central Dispatch.
Correct, yes. What I like to tell folks is anytime that you need police, fire, EMS, Coast Guard, whatever it is, dispatch to your location, dial 911. And a lot of people may think on a non-emergency type call, like a stolen bicycle or something like that, that doesn't warrant a 911 call. But for us, we would like you to dial 911 because we get a lot of information when you dial 911, and it makes it much easier for us to process that call.
But you don't like 911 hang-ups, do you? Because those you have to follow up on?
We do, yes, and we get a number of those. If we get a 911 hang-up call, we do always call back. And in most instances, we do have to send a police officer to verify that there isn't an issue.
So it's not something somebody should play around with?
No, and if somebody does inadvertently dial 911, please just stay on the line, talk to the dispatcher, and we'll be able to to resolve the call that way.
Okay, one of the important things that's happening now, and I know you've been in a lead role in this, is in bringing together the 911 agencies in the UP. Tell us about how that's working.
Yes, back in 2008, we formed the UP 911 Authority, and all 15 counties are a member of that authority. And the authority covers the 8 911 dispatch centers that cover those 15 counties. The reason we formed this authority is to give us some purchasing power and to share equipment. We looked at the industry, and there was some move towards consolidation. And traditional consolidation means you shut down a bunch of centers, move into one, and you don't see a benefit to that right away because there's usually a huge capital investment that has to be made. And some of the locals lose control. 911 service is definitely, in my opinion, and the opinion I'm shared by the folks in the UP, is a local service. We're part of the local 911 team. But one thing that is common throughout is we all need the same equipment.
Okay.
And it didn't make sense to us to have 8 different computer-aided dispatch systems and 8 different phone systems. Let's purchase one and share it.
Okay.
And so that was the driving force behind the 911 Authority. And we reached out to UPCAP, which is the Upper Peninsula Commission on Area Progress, to be our administrative agent for the authority, because it is a legal authority that can sign contracts, own equipment, that type of thing. And they were a group that does a lot of work in the UP we were very familiar with, and they were a logical choice for us to run the authority. And the nicest thing that we've done with the authority are several things. First is we've been able to secure a lot of grant funding. To date, we're over $3 million in grant funding. And we have linked our 8 centers together on a common network. It's on a fiber optic network. We were able to form a public-private partnership with Peninsula Fiber Network, which is a local UP company providing that network service for us. So now all centers are sharing information. We're all connected on a network. And one of the biggest things that we were able to do with the grant funding is we were the first area in the state of Michigan and one of the first of a handful in the country that was able to go to an internet-based, it's a private network, not public internet, but an IP-based telephone network for delivery of 911 calls. Okay. First in the state.
So this has been kind of a model that others are looking at.
Yes, it's being copied now throughout the Lower Peninsula. In fact, Peninsula Fiber Network is growing into the Lower Peninsula. They have a total of 49 counties in the state of Michigan. Over half the state committed to joining that same system that we've been using since 2014.
Okay. Have to take a break. We'll get back with more on this after we take a 2-minute break here on the Ryan Report. And again, we're talking with Gary Johnson, manager of the Marquette County Central Dispatch, but also a leader in setting up the UP Authority. We were talking when we went away about the network that's been set up. What kind of benefits does that provide going forward?
Well, the biggest thing that it provides us, like any high-speed data network now, the type of information we can take in is pretty much unlimited. The old system that we were just operating on, and what most 911 centers are still operating on, is a copper wire system. It's the old phone system. And there was very little data that we could get on that system. We got the caller's name, their address, and a phone number, if that was a landline phone. Cellular phones, we had to make those work on that system. With this system that we have in place now, we're going to be able to take any sorts of data that someone can provide. It's what we in the industry call next generation 911. And so with that system, not only does it give us more flexibility in the types of data that we can receive, it also is much more reliable and much more redundant than the old system. We used to have, unfortunately, too often 911 outages caused by cable cuts. We had one where it happened in just north of Appleton that took out the entire UP's 911 for several hours. Those single points of failure have been addressed in this new system. If someone cuts the fiber optic network we're on now, it's a ring network, so the information goes the other direction. We don't see that issue anymore. And we built in about 4 or 5 layers of redundancy. Okay. So that makes us much more resilient and reliable.
Someone has asked about cell phones, and you mentioned cell phones. Can you actually get the data you need from a cell phone caller?
We can. It's not as accurate and reliable as we would like. There's 2 types of methods that cell phone companies use to get us a location. It's either a GPS chip in the phone, or they depend on a triangulation off of 3 cellular towers. Well, you can imagine in the UP, most of our cellular towers follow a road, like M28 or US 41, the highways and those main roads. So it's hard to get that triangulation. So on those type of phones, the accuracy tends to be off. It is something that the FCC is working with the providers to improve. The other issue we run into, and it's not as big of an issue for us as it is in the urban areas, but you don't have the height. So for instance, if someone's calling from a 20-story building, it may tell you the address of the building, but not what floor they're on. Okay. And so those are the issues we're still working through with cellular, and we really do depend on the caller to be able to help us with their location.
We only have a short time left, but texting is also something new, right?
Correct. We are, in September of last year, started providing text to 911. And that's a real benefit for, obviously, our hearing and speech impaired community. Gives them far more access to 911 than they've ever had before. And we are the only area in the state that is actually taking text over the 911 phone system. All the few areas in the state that are providing this service are depending on an internet connection, which can be somewhat unreliable. Ours is much more stable. Again, another benefit to this private-public partnership we formed and what we've done with this network. So now people can text us.
Yeah. We're just about out of time. Okay. I did want to say that it sounds like we've managed to keep things local, but yet enjoy the benefits of working together regionally, and that as a result of that, we're really in front of a lot of places in the state or the country.
Correct, yes. And we've actually had FEMA do some stories through their Office of Emergency Communication as a model for other areas of the country to follow on what we've done here. We've done what we term a virtual consolidation rather than a physical consolidation. It did not take as much capital up front, and we're seeing the benefits through technology and through the economics of it. Our costs, our maintenance costs and those type of things have gone down anywhere from 20 to 50% by sharing, by going to single maintenance contracts, those type of things. So it's been a huge benefit.
It's a great positive story, and thanks for coming in and sharing the story this morning. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. It's time for a Ryan Report flashback. With the sled dog season here, I thought it would be a good time to look back at an interview with Marquette veterinarian Dr. Tim Hunt. The conversation was about his participation in the Iditarod race in Alaska. We asked Dr. Hunt how he first became interested in racing, and he explained that when he first opened his practice in 1973, he had no clients, so he thought it would be a good idea to get a couple of kennels that were local and have 60 to 70 sled dogs.
Little did I know that most mushers don't have any money, and little did I know that I'd fall in love with working with these dogs. So what happened was suddenly I was starting to barter my services for some dogs, and then lo and behold, 4 became 8, 8 became 16 dogs, and that's how it kind of started back in '93.
We've got some video, and if I can get there we go. We're starting out with a couple of pictures here. Where was this?
This is the actual finish in Nome after I came in. It took us about 12 days to do the race. This here is actually during the race with the sun there. In that time of year, the sun's not up very long. It's pretty low on the horizon. Beautiful sunsets in Alaska. 16 dogs ahead of us there running through the trail heading up towards Huslia, which is up on the interior. At this point, it started to become very cold, roughly 30 below, and then it got colder and colder with the end point being about 60 below.
And there you are.
Yes, yep. It was brisk, but you're dressed for it. Many, many layers of clothing.
We have a scene coming up in just a minute that I know, and it looks like it's some pretty mean weather. This isn't it, but it'll be along in a second. But I assume you encounter all kinds of different weather during the trip, and this is the video I was talking about.
Yeah, this is on Norton Sound, which is on the Bering Sea, the ocean, and we encountered a ground blizzard with about 40-mile-an-hour winds, and they had stopped the race roughly for about close to a day before we ventured out into it. In this segment, about 9 teams went out, and only 3 made it across, with 6 stopping and 4 being rescued, I think it was. So it was really brutal conditions. 20 below with that headwind was the hardest mushing I've ever encountered. Those dogs were amazing. They just kept going straight. We couldn't find the trail, except the dogs would find the trail. So it was 10 hours of intense mushing.
And here we're back to some...
This is actually a training run. This is one of my favorite videos of all time, with the sun coming up. This is in December. The sun's only up about 4.5 hours. This is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. All the snow you see on the trees is actually caused by ice fog in this area of Alaska. We had to travel 7 hours north to get to snow because there was no snow in Alaska. You had to go find it. This here is in Ruby. This is where I took a 24-hour layover. This is a checkpoint, typical checkpoint routine. All the dogs are bedded down on straw. You saw that cooker with the steam coming out. That's how we heat water to throw on food, which is frozen meat, and then we add kibble to it. There's 16 dogs here are resting nice and comfortable. They had a good snooze here, and this was great for me because I got some sleep. Most checkpoints I get about an hour of sleep, and off we go again.
How many hours are you on the trail in a race like Iditarod?
Well, we typically run 50 miles and then a 5-hour break. So that 50 miles could be 7 hours of running time and then 5 hours of break time. And in that 5 hours, you're doing all the dog chores, taking their booties off and on, and feeding them and so on. For instance, we went through 1,500 booties in this race alone to take care of the dogs. It's a lot of putting booties on and taking booties off. Tremendous amount of dog care. We were lucky enough with this team, we had the whole team through 2/3 of the race before we had our first injury where we had to drop a dog or leave one behind. Here again is in training with the ice fog and how it makes these trees look pretty ghostly.
Kind of a naive question, but you have spare dogs? Is that how it
No,
works?
actually we start with 16 dogs in the Iditarod. It's 1,000 miles, and we can only drop dogs, meaning leave them behind at a checkpoint to be flown out. We have to finish with at least 5 dogs. We finished with 12 dogs in this year's race.
You know, it has to be very lonely out there. What goes through your mind? As
Everything goes through your mind. It's so nice. 12 days with no cell phone is a dream, Don.
Yeah.
It's really nice. So you're thinking about everything in the world, and you never know where your mind's going to be taking you. But mainly you're watching those dog fannies and what comes out of them, to watch for any lameness issue and see how they're going along the trail. These dogs were just tremendous. We had a lot of fun. We trained in Alaska this year, so I traveled back and forth to Alaska once a month for roughly 7 to 10 days and trained dogs in between. Someone else trained the dogs while I was up there until I went back in February for about a month.
Any advice for anyone thinking about getting involved with sled dog racing? Maybe the advice is not to, but no. I just
Well, it's a lifestyle. It's not an easy thing. It's not like a snowmobile where you can turn it off and put it in the shed. These guys take year-round care. But they also are very rewarding. But it's a lifestyle thing. Luckily, my wife is good with that, and my staff at work understand kind of this is in my blood and it takes up my time. This is us coming into Nome. This is the actual finish of the race after 1,000 miles, and these dogs are still rolling along really nice. We had a good time. It was hard, but very rewarding. It was very cold this year. Northern Lights every night was great, but it was cold. Ended up with the dog in a sled bag with me, sleeping there more than a few times. Keeps you warm when you're camped out without any structure.
It's just fascinating.
It really is.
How did you decide you were going to go to Alaska to do this?
Because I find this the most rewarding kind of racing for me. I really like this style of racing where you just go off with a group of dogs, have to take care of them for a week and a half, and Alaska's beautiful. I love it up there. It's just a huge state with so much to see. And to have it with the dog team, it's been nice. I've been lucky enough with dogs to be able to travel to various parts of the world and do things like the European Alps and such. And
I was going to say, I know you've done some other races too, haven't you?
yeah, I've done a lot of races. I've done it in the Rockies and in Alps, Canada and Alaska. It's fun because you go on trails which are not normally traversed by people. So you're out there on your own with just animals.
The Iditarod is an exciting event. We appreciate Dr. Hunt giving us some insights into what it's like for someone who actually participates. It's that season, so if there's one in your area, check it out. Back in 2 minutes. I've always been interested in how a simple phrase can communicate important ideas or meaningful thoughts about life. I keep a list of favorite sayings and pull it out once in a while just to be reminded of the thoughts they convey. Sometimes they're serious, other times humorous, but the good ones can really make their point. It's clear some people are especially talented at capturing an idea in a phrase. Benjamin Franklin was not only one of the best, but his thoughts stand the test of time. It was Franklin who said, "A penny saved is a penny earned." We may want to increase the amount of money, but the thought remains true. How about a stitch in time saves nine? How many times have we turned a small job into a big task because we didn't get at it in time? For me, that's happened too many times. Franklin also wrote, "In wine there is wisdom, in beer there is freedom, in water there is bacteria." Now that's a little strange. A couple of others include, "Never ruin an apology with an excuse." It makes sense. And "What's a sundial in the shade?" But they're not all from Franklin. Henry Ford once said, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're probably right." And he's probably right. A humorist from the early 1900s said, "The safest way to double your money is to fold it over once and put it in your pocket." Might be something to consider with Wall Street reacting the way it has been lately. Dolly Parton once said, "The way I see it, if you want the rainbow, you've got to put up with the rain." And NASCAR driver Cale Yarborough had this thought, "Don't ever wrestle with a pig. You'll both get dirty, but the pig will enjoy it." We can go back to the Bible to find some bits of wisdom. Proverbs has many, including, "An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips." Or there's this, "A gossip betrays a confidence, so avoid a man who talks too much." But I especially like this one. "Gray hair is a crown of splendor. It's attained by a righteous life." Amen to that. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Thanks very much for tuning in this morning, and thanks to Gary Johnson for joining us to talk about Central Dispatch and 911. It's a valuable service when you need it. It's good to know that it's working well here in Upper Michigan. I want to remind you that if you missed this show or want to see it again, it is available on the internet. Go to uppermichigansource.com and click on the Features tab. We're always interested in hearing what's on your mind. You can send an email to the Ryan Report at chesstv.com. The Today Show is anxious to get started, so it's time for us to move on out. Have a great day, and please join us again next Sunday morning.